evening to share with you some news about the physiopathology and possibly the way the treatment of hyperpigmentation. Certainly in the last few years, we learned a lot about melanocyte melanogenesis process. The capability to grow melanocyte in culture has produced several tools to study the biology of the cells, the capability to interact with the other cells of the skin, to understand better which are the mechanisms which control the process of the melanogenesis. It could help us to understand how complex is really the process of melanogenesis. Just to have an idea, we have about 300 different genes that control the pigmentation, and this provides some indication how complex is the process and how many different pathways could be involved just to have the final product of melanin, or just to have some indication about the color around the skin and our hairs. So this evening we will try to focus on hyperpigment radiations. I'm sure that all of you would be more expert than me about the clinical treatment or the clinical approach of hyperpigment radiations and the clinical diagnosis of hyperpigmentation. So we will not focus about this type of diagnosis, but there are several types of hyperpigmentation. Some melasma, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, antigosemide, and so and so. To try to understand the reason why we speak about different treatment of hyperpigmentation is related by several facts. At the beginning, there are some existing modalities to treating hyperpigmentation up to now, but can we consider really that we have the right way to treat hyperpigmentation? Looking for some recent review about these topics, it's been reported that prevention of UV radiation, topical lightening agents, chemical peel, and the light-based and laser therapies are treatments that we can use for hyperpigmentation. And recently some interest in oral medication and dietary supplements has been growing. However, the management is usually challenging. It's often recalcitrant all the type of hyperpigmentation. Particularly, we will focus on melasma this evening, but because often they can recur and they also despite successful treatment. So certainly there are a lot of people looking for different possibilities to modify or to improve the chemical compounds capable to control the pigmentation. If we look on PubMed with the keywords drugs inhibiting melanogenesis, we reveal a plethora of drugs, a plethora of molecules, synthetic molecules, natural molecules, botanicals, that can worsen the various aspects of the melanogenesis. Most of them work to try to inhibit tyrosinase, or to degrade tyrosinase, or to inhibit the maturation of tyrosinase, but only a minority of them are able to transcend in vitro experiment to clinical in vivo application. I think that is a relevant aspect because there are several suggestions by this sentences reported in this paper. First of all, that there is a great interest from the scientific community to try to identify the mechanism controlling pigmentation, to try to modulate the pigmentation, both in inducing tanning or to induce pigmentation or to reduce the natural pigment, the constitutive pigmentation, and to reduce the hyperpigmentary disorders. There is a lot of interest by the pharmaceutical and cosmetical companies just to provide some real drug or real active ingredient capable to control this phenomenon that affect millions of people around the world. Hyperpigmentation particularly has been reported to affect between 35 to 65% of the human population according to the type of hyperpigmentation that we will take care, we will consider. But probably just to approach the pigmentation, we have to rapidly remind how the process of pigmentation can occur and just what we have learned by the recent research approach, because this probably can explain or can provide some indication how complex is the process and how and why it's not so easy to control this process. All of us knows that melanocytes produce melanin. The process of melanin synthesis is induced by starts from tyrosine generating dopaquinone, and then through different intermediate molecules are produced eomelanin or pheomelanin. Pheomelanin is the black melanin, insoluble melanin, capable to protect against UV light, whereas pheomelanin that is produced basically for a polymorphism of the receptor for alpha MSH is less protective, can propagate free radical damage induced by UV, and individuals with pheomelanin can be more prone to develop disorder of pigmentation, including melanoma. But this is not, the constitutive pigmentation is not exclusively related to the ratio between the two different types of melanin, because it's related also to the size of the melanosomes, the capability of the melanosome to create aggregate, and also to the process of the degradation of the melanosome inside the keratinocytes. All these phenomena are related to the different type of the skin and hair colors that we can observe also in this hall this evening. But which are the factors which control pigmentation? We know that certainly melanocytes are the key player because they produce melanin. They possess the specific enzymes to synthesize melanin, tyrosinase and tyrosinase-related protein. But their activity is regulated by several soluble factors, growth factors, cytokines, that are produced by keratinocytes at the beginning. Certainly, alpha MSH, the melanocyte-stimulating hormone, probably the most relevant hormone correlated to the pigmentation, is generated by keratinocytes that activate melanocyte through the activation of the specific receptor MC1R. But keratinocytes are capable to produce also endothelin-1, that is another pro-melanogenic factors, is capable to produce stem cell factors. So the keratinocytes regulate the survival and the activities of the melanocytes. But what has been recently demonstrated that also fibroblasts, the dermis, is capable to control the process of the melanogenesis. Fibroblasts produce and release several growth factors and cytokines belonging to a paracrine signaling network which control melanocyte function. And among that, certainly the stem cell factor, the neuroregulating one, the hepatocyte growth factors, the keratinocyte growth factors, and all of that directly or indirectly regulate the melanocyte activity. So this means that melanocytes are a terminal of a great network of the cells working around that. And some recent data have shown that also sebocytes probably are capable to modify the activity of the melanocytes, and this possibly could explain why some hyperpigmentary lesions such as melasma specifically affect areas with a significant high concentration of sebaceous gland. The fact that this relationship is really true has been demonstrated in some of our data that we get several years ago together with the group of Valente in Bordeaux, just mixing in the model of reconstructed epidermis keratinocytes and melanocytes of individuals of the different phototypes. So if we mix keratinocytes and melanocytes with high phototype individual, we have this a black skin or dark skin. But if we include melanocytes from light phototype and darker keratinocytes, it's something different, as well as different if we have a melanocyte from a dark individual with keratinocyte of a light individual. This is a clear indication that the keratinocytes and melanocytes can correlate, can modify the activity of the melanocytes. And this has been subsequently demonstrated also including fibroblasts, as well as fibroblasts are capable to modify the final pigmentation process. But what happens following UV radiation? It's basically the major causal effect of the tanning, but also of the occurring of hyperpigmentary disorders. UV, particularly UVB, which produce the constitutive, the permanent tanning, not necessarily is capable to reach the basal layer where melanocytes are located. But they are capable to activate keratinocytes, inducing the generation of reactive oxygen species, nitric oxide, to produce alpha mSH, and this process is controlled by the activation of P53. And P53, we know that it's the relevant proteins which control the proliferation of the cells, just to give to the cells the possibility to repair any damage of DNA. So this means that basically the tanning process, the pigmentation process, is the process which starts following some damage on the DNA, and some reparative response of the skin towards an environmental factors. The release of these factors produce the activation of pigmentation of keratinocytes. Among these factors also endothelin-1 and interleukin-1 is are relevant factors. This means that in any case, to produce a pigmentation, the production of pigmentation is associated with the induction of inflammatory reaction. Inflammatory reaction is something that is correlated with the induction of pigmentation for the UV radiation, and in fact is considered that the inhibition of the inflammatory process through the release of some gamma interferons is probably the mechanism why we stop to tanning the skin following the exposure to UV. These biological aspects are relevant because if we want to treat hyperpigmentary disorders, we have to take into consideration that not necessarily we have to attack melanocytes, or not necessarily will be, or not necessarily will be enough to inhibit the synthesis of the melanin or the activities of tyrosinase. In fact, just if we look for several types of hyperpigmentary disorders by different methods of histology, ex vivo analysis of the expression of different growth factors, looking for mRNA, protein of these factors, it's been clearly demonstrated by several groups, including us, that in melasma, in post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, in soral and tigo, there is an overexpression of all or most of these factors, indicating that not exclusively melanocytes has been targeted, has been activated by the process, but also the surrounding cells are involved by this process. And just focusing about melasma as the major or the most frequent type of hyperpigmentation, particularly the most frequent type of hyperpigmentation that we would like to treat, what we can say that there is a common phenomenon that affected by hormones, may fade postpartum, is more common in brown races, and 90% are women who are affected. Certainly is worsened by UV light, but probably we can say that it's induced by UV light. Without UV light, we have not the appearance of melasma. It's just psychologically distressing and can present distinct morphology with regards to other hyperpigmentary disorders. What can be, or which can be considered causative factors of melasma? Certainly a genetic predisposition. At least 50% of the ladies, of the people with melasma, can say that someone in the family had previous melasma. So certainly, even if we have not any clear indication about that, there are not any serious genetic studies on melasma, we can say that there is a familiarity, there is some genetic background in people with melasma. There is a high-intensity visible light exposure. It could be that there is a pregnancy of the oral contraceptive therapy that has been done. Could be present some endocrine disorders or hormonal treatments, and certainly there are some inflammatory processes. So probably the melasma could be one clinical phenotype, but probably many cellular players and pathways are involved in the pathogenesis of these disorders. Just to remind about the genetic factor in melasma, again, the incidence of melasma in family members reported by affected patients vary from 10% to 50% or 54%. Melasma is more common in dark skin type and certain racial group, and again, this is what Amit Pandya reported recently, that the genetic studies are lacking, so we have to try to consider these possibilities. About the role of the female hormones, there is a discussion. Historically, it's been considered that sex hormone has a relevant role in the appearance of melasma, but now there are some discussion about that, because certainly the incidence in the pregnant women is between 15 to 56%, so there is a great variation. So it's not necessarily linked to the pregnant situation.
Again, there's a great variation in the different data in the literature about the incidence in women using oral contraceptive in different countries. And the studies performed to try to identify modification in the plasma level, circulating level of different hormones are not completely clear, because certainly estrogen and also alpha MSH are increased during pregnancy. But the serum level of most of these hormones and some other hormones in non-pregnant subjects with melasma are not significantly different from individuals without melasma. So probably some local effect could be related to the appearance of the manifestation. This is some histological study showing that the estrogen receptor beta is more expressed in keratinocytes of affected area of melasma. So probably there is some different local response to a normal stimulus that is not necessarily altered. But what is certain that is a preferential development during the reproductive lifespan of women. And generally melasma tends spontaneously to disappear after the menopause. But which is the histopathology findings in melasma? Although melasma is characterized by epidermal pigmentation, dermal extracellular matrix abnormalities are commonly observed. This is something that was not necessarily clear a few years ago. And solar elastosis, accumulation of normal elastic tissue in the dermis due to prolonged sun exposure, has been frequently described in affected area of melasma. And the moderate to severe degree of solar elastosis were reported in 93% of melasma patients. This indicates that specifically in the affected area, but also in the perilesional area, there is some sun damage related manifestation. And one of the other characteristics of melasma is the presence of these pendulous melanocytes. This has been nicely described by Dr. Kang from Korea. And she described the presence of these melanocytes that basically are pendulous. They are capable to penetrate the basal membranes, going towards the dermis. This suggests that there is some alteration in the basal membrane that probably is correlated with the sun damage. And this capability to have this intermediate melanocytes it seems to be quite typical of melasma. And associated with that, there is an overexpression of metalloproteinases that is significantly increased in lesional area. It has been demonstrated, it's clear that keratinocytes are altered, or there is an alteration in the activity of the keratinocyte in melasma, because the INOS, the enzymes which lead to the production of nitric oxide is overexpressed. And the basal keratinocytes from melasma display change in nuclear form and chromatin texture, indicating that basically the entire skin is involved in this process. And what recently has been reported that in melasma there is also an alteration of the vasculature. This could be associated also with the photo damage, and in the case that now has been proposed as a possible basis for a different approach of melasma, just focusing on the vasculature rather than on the pigmentation. Histologically, it's been observed that increasing the number of size of the blood vessels and increases expression of VEGF, the factor which induce the generation of new small blood vessels. And the pronounced telangiectasia erythema noticed in melasma lesion has been suggested to role to increase in number and enlarged vessel in the development of melasma. Alteration of the correlation about different population of the skin has been demonstrated also in solar lentigo as another paradigm of hyperpigmentary lesions. Solar lentigo are certainly associated with the cumulative sun exposure. Solar lentigo could be associated also with intermittent sun exposure, and are associated with the elastosis and actinic keratosis. So, in any case, there is a similar type of response of hyperpigmentation, but in solar lentigo there is also some hyperproliferation aspect of the keratinocytes. Frequently in solar lentigo, overexpression of P53 can be observed. The continuity between solar lentigo and actinic keratosis is not uncommon, suggesting again that hyperpigmentation or pigmentation response is a way through which the skin tries to protect against the damage related to UV exposure. And the again, it's been demonstrated, some data from our group, that the several growth factors produced by fibroblasts are overexpressed in solanine thymium. If we produce a photo damage, a photo aging process in fibroblasts in vitro, the fibroblasts from newborn or from newborn skin start to produce these growth factors, suggesting that certainly the photo damage is an essential prerequisite, it's essential aspect to lead for the appearance of hyperpigmentation in solanine thymium. And several differences has been demonstrated also in post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, where certainly there is an increase of the alteration of the lipid metabolism correlated with the duration of prostaglandins. And again, has been recently underlined that inflammatory reaction could be a relevant aspect of melasma. Just to remind that probably different aspects of hyperpigmentation share similar pathogenic mechanism or share similar growth factors, alteration of the several similar population. And this is the basis why we try to treat hyperpigmentation with a similar approach. But which are the principles of the therapies for the hyperpigmentation? This is a pyramid proposed by Amit Pandya. Sun protection is considered the basal step to approach any form of hyperpigmentation, because in any case, hyperpigmentation is associated with UV exposure. We have now I have reported this data that in any type of hyperpigmentation, or most type of hyperpigmentation, there is some sun damage. So to prevent the sun damage, to use the photoprotection, to suggest photoprotection in women in pregnancy, on women starting to take the pills, or just with familiarity of melasma, is probably one of the best strategies that we can apply to prevent the appearance of hyperpigmentation. Then we can use topical products capable to interfere with the process of the melanogenesis, such as hydroquinone, of course, but also arbutin, retinoic acid, azelaic acid. We can use chemical pills to increase the removal of melanosomes from the keratinocytes, and laser to try to destroy the granules of melanins. This is a data just from Morocco showing that the use of high SPF, the nice sunscreen, is capable to prevent the appearance of melasma in ladies that become pregnant, indicating clinically that really the use of sunscreen is useful, is one of the best strategies that we can have. We have to take into consideration that not exclusively UVB could be responsible for the appearance of melasma. These are some recent data from the group of Thierry Passeron, showing that also visible light can worsening, particularly individual with high phototype, can worsening the appearance of hyperpigmentation and melasma. So probably we have, at least in individual with high phototype, we have to take into consideration to use a quite wide, broad spectrum of filters. But we can act as chemical agents. Certainly we can try to use butyric peptide, the glucosamine retinoic acid, just to reduce the capability to induce the transcription of tyrosinase, to inhibit the activities of all these factors that we have seen are capable to activate melanocytes, or capable to glucosamine to inhibit the maturation of tyrosinase. So we can try to have less tyrosinase inside the melanocytes. Then we can try to inhibit the activities of tyrosinase, it's the major enzymes involved in the pigmentation, using hydroquinone, but also some other new derivatives of hydroquinone, such as ruchinol, that is derivative of resorcinol, or also azelaic acid. I report azelaic acid because the pharmacological activity, the biological activity of azelaic acid has been discovered in the group where I'm working. So I started to work with azelaic acid, so I have particularly affection to these molecules, even if it's not particularly active in the treatment of hyperpigmentation. And also some scavenger reactive oxygen species, such as ascorbic acid derivatives, tocopherol ferrolate, are capable to inhibit the tyrosinase activity. Hydroquinone is certainly the paradigm, the gold standard. Concentration higher than 2%, between 4–5% are useful for the treatment of hyperpigmentation. Certainly is capable to act as an alternative substrate of tyrosinase. So hydroquinone is oxidized by the tyrosinase, without leading to the production of a pigment, but is capable also to inhibit DNA RNA synthesis and to interfere, to induce a degradation of melanosome, and according to the different concentration can produce also a cytotoxic effect on the melanocytes, and this is probably the reason why ochronosis can appear, some depigmentation can appear. And this is a list of different other molecules that you see basically resemble the molecules of hydroquinone, just to have a molecule that is similar to DOPA, to have a competition on the enzymes between the natural substrate and the alternative substrate. Arbutin is a derivative of hydroquinone and probably release hydroquinone inside the cell. Ruchinol is, as we told before, a derivative, but also resveratrol are capable to interfere in the same mechanism, and kojic acid, methylgentisate, lagic acid, wherever different molecules, azelaic acid, which is a decarboxylic acid, it's a saturated decarboxylic acid. Kojic acid has been used as alternative hydroquinone. Initially it was some expectation or some expectative toward these molecules. Now it's not so frequently used because clinically the results were not so good as expected. Whereas the butyl resorcinol, a different other type of resorcinol, are currently used as reference for the pigmenting agent because it's capable to inhibit tyrosinase, but also tyrosinase-related protein 1. Inside the melanocyte, we have several proteins which control the melanogenesis. Tyrosinase, the major enzymes, but we have at least another 2 proteins called tyrosinase-related protein 1 and 2. And resorcinol is capable to inhibit also tyrosinase-related protein 1 with less side effects related to hydroquinone, but the depigmenting effect or the lightening effect is at least comparable to those of hydroquinone. Now there are some possibility to have a safety efficacy of liposome encapsulated butyl resorcinol at the concentration of 0.1, whereas the other products are 0.2, or some one has been tested also 0.4 per concentration. So just increasing the penetration of these molecules, we can have some better results. Azelaic acid, this is the formula of azelaic acid, was initially isolated by pityrosporum ovale. So the idea at the beginning was it was the causative agent to have depigmentation in pityriasis versicolor, but then has been demonstrated that it is not the case. The azelaic acid can produce this effect, but it needs a long time and several weeks to have these type of results. And these are some of the data we reported at that time that is comparable to the effect of 4% hydroquinone superior than 2% of hydroquinone. Now it's been presented this octadecendioic acid. There's something similar to azelaic acid because it's dicarboxylic acid longer than azelaic acid, with one in saturation. This molecule seems to be efficacious as a whitening agent because it's capable to interfere with different steps of the melanogenesis, including the inhibiting the melanosome transfer, and acts not necessarily on tyrosinase, but this nuclear peroxisome proliferator activator receptors. This is a relevant group of receptors that combined with the retinoid receptor are capable to control several genes, including those related to cell differentiation. However, group have demonstrated that azelaic acid is capable to worsen this type of receptors. And this is some of the clinical results using these molecules that seems to be very promising. This is some of the data about one of the different possible derivatives of ascorbic acid. I'm not so confident that derivative of ascorbic acid is so useful in the treatment of hyperpigmentation. Other strategies for the pigmenting could be to use PAR2 inhibitor. PAR2 is the receptor which allows the melanoma to transfer to the melanocyte to the keratinocytes. So the idea, as well as the niacinamide, is to inhibit the transfer of the melanoma in the keratinocytes. And then alpha-hydroxy acid, or sometimes also beta-hydroxy acid, can be used to induce pills to remove the melanosome, the melanin inside the keratinocytes. And this is the different type of peeling agents that can be used in melasma. Probably it's not relevant to focus on that because all of you know that there is not any particular news in this aspect. And all these aspects, probably all the aspects that we have just briefly tried to remind, has been included in the triple combination cream. Even if the triple combination, when was produced, not necessarily they had all this competition, all this notion about the control of the pigmentation. Kligman at that time he included, together with hydroquinone, tretinoin, because he worked on tretinoin, and the idea just to increase the peels, just to increase the capability to penetrate hydroquinone, but probably tretinoin is capable also to inhibit the expression of tyrosinase, the activation of tyrosinase, but the gene expression of tyrosinase, and he added fluocinolone acetonide. Basically some corticosteroids. The idea at that time was just to reduce the irritation induced by the hydroquinone and the combination of hydroquinone and tretinoin. But probably cortisol is capable to interfere with the melanogenesis process, at least just to reduce the inflammatory process that is basal event for any type of hyperpigmentation. So this is an example how we can approach it, how we are capable to reach relevant results just combining different agents capable to act in the different steps of the melanogenesis. Some oral antioxidants have been suggested for melasma, such as polypodiculacotomas. In Europe, we use a lot of these polypodiculacotomas as subprotector factors. So, just prepare to the sun exposure, has been reported as some capability to reduce melasma. The clinical studies that have been performed are not so clear and so well done. So probably it's not so useful. And the news for oral treatment is the use of tranexamic acid. That probably was discovered occasionally. The idea is that tranexamic acid is capable to inhibit plasmin and plasminogen that are released by the keratinocytes, and capable to control also this factor, the melanogenesis of the melanocytes. And tranexamic acid now seems to be a quite interesting new approach for the treatment of melasma. Basically, topical application seems not to work so well, not capable to achieve relevant results, wherever systemic administration, a quite high concentration for at least 2 months, are capable to reduce hyperpigmentation, to modify histologically the epidermal pigmentation, the vascularity, and the mast cell numbers. Because probably the major aspect where tranexamic acid is on the activity of the mast cells. So again, possibly through the inhibition of mediators of inflammation which are capable to induce modification of the vascularity, and then for the activity of the melanocytes. So not necessarily direct effect on the melanocytes, but some indirect effect of the neighborhood cells. And these are some other clinical data on tranexamic acid. This is a retrospective analysis on a quite large number of the patients, showing that it was a quite large number of subjects with an improvement following systemic assumption of tranexamic acid, with a few side effects. And at the least, one of the possibilities that has been recently reported is the microneedling in facial recalcitrant melasma. Microneedling can probably produce an activation of the fibroblasts, the dermis, just capable to contract to the photo damage that is related to the fibroblasts, and it is associated with the increased production of growth factors capable to maintain the pigmentation. Again, just to try to contract to the aging process. And this is some of the different formula available in Europe. Just to say that the new approach for the therapy of hyperpigmentation is to combine molecules that are capable to interact with the different steps of the melanogenetic process. The same view, the triple combination, the treatment, but we're using different molecules, trying to reduce the possibility of the side effect and try to improve the type of the results. But what will be presented this evening, this is the reason why we have been invited to stay here this evening, it probably we can use another strategy, we can combine more strategy. And one of the possible strategy could be to use the camouflage for the hyperpigmentation. In any case, we have to take in consideration that any therapy for hyperpigmentation takes a long time, at least a couple of months, sometimes just to have some initial response. Probably we need even longer period of treatment. We know that particularly for melasma, there is a recurrence of the manifestation following a subsequent UV exposure. So the possibility to start with the camouflage in association with the therapy probably can increase the compliance of the patients, provide some relevant results, and produce more adherence to the therapy. And I suppose that we can have some in vivo experience of the treatment with this camouflage, right?